In today's video, I wanted to talk about a certain trend we're seeing around the league in the 2021 and 22 season that's really caught my eye, and I don't think a lot of other NBA fans have really even noticed this that much, but compared to last season, scoring has been down a lot this season, and I think there's really just four main reasons why this is happening, and that's what I'm going to be doing in today's video, is going through these reasons and analyzing how it's affecting the league in either a positive or negative way, and how it's affecting the league scoring to be slightly down in this 2021 and 22 season. So let's get into the analysis. Now, before I actually talk about the reasons why I think scoring is down this season, let's actually just acknowledge first how much it actually is down compared to last season, because like I said, probably a lot of you guys who are more casual fans of the NBA and just watch the occasional game here and there are probably not even aware of how this has been happening this season and how the stats scoring wise are down from this season compared to last season. And going into this NBA season, tons of fans across the league really expected this to be an historic offensive season statistic wise across the league, because really last year that's what we got. We see in the league today so much more 3-point shooting, much more pace, and actually in the 2019-2018 seasons the pace in the NBA was actually over 100 for the first time in history, and the offensive ratings were as high as ever. And then in last season, in the 2020 and 2021 season, we actually saw the highest offensive rating across the league in league average in NBA history, with an offensive rating of 112.3 as the league average. But compared to this season, the league average offensive rating so far this year is 109.2, which, as you can see, is a pretty decent drop off from last season, especially considering that the fans across the league really thought this was going to go nowhere but up. And then when we look at some shooting percentages from the league averages from last year compared to this year, last year the league average field goal percentage was 46.6% compared to this year where it's 45.3%. 3-point shooting was really at an all-time high, as last year there was the most attempts and the league average percentage was 36.7%, whereas this year there's actually the most attempts we've ever seen in NBA history, even more than last year, but the percentage is actually going all the way down to 34.8% now. The league average true shooting last year was about 57.2, whereas this year it's only 55.6. And then with effective field goal percentage, it's also dropped off a little bit, as last year the league average effective field goal percentage was 53.8%, whereas this year it's 52.3%. So as you can see here, the percentages have dropped off anywhere from about 1.5 to 3%, which you might not think is that much, but when you really look at it, this is across the entire NBA. This is really the league average. A drop off of 1 to 3% is definitely a pretty big drop off, and then you see with the offensive rating too dropping about 3 points there. So there's no secret when you look at the statistics and really analyze it, you can definitely see that overall scoring has taken a little bit of a drop off this year compared to last year. So when we take a deep dive into the reasons why scoring is down this season compared to past seasons, the first reason I wanted to discuss, and really what I think is the main reason why scoring is down this season, is how the NBA now has a new game ball. So ever since 1983 up until last season, the NBA's game ball has been Spalding, and this year they changed it to Wilson, and Wilson was the sponsor from when the NBA started up until 1983, and then for the last 37 years it's been Spalding, and players in today's NBA have obviously never played with a game ball other than Spalding. So basically this year, you can definitely see that some players across the league are definitely just having a little bit of trouble adjusting to the new ball and how it's a little bit different. It's got a little bit of a different grip, a little bit of a different feel overall. And overall, like I mentioned earlier, the league average 3-point percentage this season, so when we look at just shooting in general in the long ball, the league average 3-point percentage, like I mentioned, is 34.8%, which in a 3-point shooting league, which is right now in the NBA, of course, this is really low, as this is actually the lowest league average 3-point percentage that we've seen ever since the 2003 and 2004 season. And this year we've seen stars across the league like Paul George, Devin Booker, and CJ McCollum early in the year come out and make comments about the ball, saying that it just really doesn't have the same feel as the Spalding ball and that it's going to take some adjusting to get used to. Paul George specifically did come out, and even though he's having a fantastic year this year and his shooting percentages are actually up from last year, he came out and basically said that it's really a different feel with the Wilson ball compared to the Spalding ball, and that he expects a lot of bad misses from players across the league this season. And really, ever since the start of this year, you can see that players are adjusting to this, and the shooting percentages were even worse at the very start of the year, like 10-15 games in. You can see that players are adjusting, but I really think the new ball, the Wilson ball compared to the Spalding ball, has had an effect on scoring so far this season. Another reason I think scoring is down a little bit this season is because the referees and the way that games are called are definitely different this season. As last year we saw a lot of times where players would flop and get easy calls just for flopping, and also making unnatural non-basketball moves leading into their defenders to get foul calls, but this has really been cut out of the game, and I think this is actually really a positive thing. The Wilson ball compared to the Spalding ball and shooting percentages going down because of that, you could really see that as more of a negative thing, but with the calls being different this year, I think this is more of a positive thing. Like I said, it takes out kind of those non-basketball moves that players like Trae Young, James Harden were using, and pretty much like 5 games into the season, very early on, I actually did make a video about how the new rules and new calls around the league were affecting some of the league's best players, like James Harden, for example, Joel Embiid a little bit, and definitely some other notable star players as well. But as you can see, as the season has gone on, a lot of players are adjusting to this. For example, Trae Young is actually having a much better season this year than he did last year. His shooting percentages are up. He's a much more efficient player, and his playmaking still there for sure as well, even though those kind of unnatural moves he was using to draw fouls are now taken out of his game. He's adjusted to it, but we've seen players like James Harden, for example, who I've mentioned multiple times now. He's definitely struggling with these new rules. Joel Embiid, his inability to just flop to get calls now, this is definitely affecting his scoring, his field goal percentage, all that kind of stuff. And overall across the league, we just see how a lot of players aren't able to get away with leaning in to get fouls anymore, and some of them are forcing up shots, trying to draw fouls, and they're just not able to get those calls anymore. So you can see how this has definitely affected the scoring as well. And like I said, I think overall the changes with how games are called was really a positive change that we've seen to the game this season, but we still do just have to note how it's affected scoring so far this year as well. Another thing that's affected scoring across the league this year, and especially just recently, is how there's been so many players put into health and safety protocols, and COVID is really affecting the NBA overall in general. And this is really unfortunate because I really think that across the league, talent is really at an all-time high on both ends of the floor, and it's been a really interesting season and a fun season to watch for a lot of different reasons. We see a lot of interesting teams that are in contention, a lot of great players. The conversation for best player in the league is getting more interesting by the day, but it's really unfortunate that we have seen so many star players miss lots of time because of health and safety protocols. And because of this, we've seen, especially recently, we've even seen right now some games getting postponed, teams having to call up players that have never played in the NBA before. And I think some of these G League type of players just stepping foot into the NBA for their first time, and many 10-day contract players coming in and having to fill roster spots, is also affecting scoring a little bit, as obviously these players are not very experienced in the NBA, and just on the offensive side of the floor, a lot of them just are not fully developed at all. So I think recently, this is more of a short-term thing because it hasn't been a problem over the course of the entire year, but this is probably affecting scoring across the league and league averages as well. And the last reason why I think scoring is down a little bit this year, which this reason here is really something that no one across the NBA community is talking about, but I really do think that defenses across the league are actually getting better. And we know that in today's NBA, analytics, there's more analytics than there are that we've ever seen, and I really think that teams are just getting more and more used to playing good team defense and knowing how offenses function and using analytics to their advantage to just function well as an overall defensive unit. And from what I've seen this year, I've seen a lot of teams do some very good things like shrinking the floor effectively a lot more, leaping out to effectively effectively contest threes a little bit better, sending double teams a lot more to star players and doing that at the right time as well, getting more favorable matchups a little bit more often, and being switchable if the personnel of their defense is able to do that. And just overall, it's not like defenses have gotten so much better this season, but we have seen how, especially just in recent NBA history over the last decade, defense hasn't exactly been the best this year compared to other decades like back in the 80s, 90s, the 2000s. But I really think that this year teams are really using analytics to their advantage, and I think that defenses and overall defensive IQ of coaches and teams have gotten a little bit better, and I think that has definitely factored in to how scoring's down a little bit this year as well. So there you have it. That's all I've got for you guys in today's video. I definitely think it's interesting that scoring has been down this season, so I did want to make today's video just to analyze and look at some of the reasons. So let me know what you guys thought of today's video. Comment your thoughts down below, and I'll see you all in the next video.